Now, the question though becomes, because Markkanen would like to win, and this now opens up the wing market. All the other guys behind him, Brandon Ingram, Jeremy Grant, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kyle Kuzma. Now we turn our attention to them because teams will now start to focus on those players. And now there's already some buzz that the Jazz could be a landing spot for Brandon Ingram. So first of all, do you like that idea of the Jazz saying, well, if we're keeping Lauri, let's go get somebody to help him?
Yeah, and let's be clear just on the Jazz part of this. Even if they bring Markkanen up to his max this year, which is about 42 million, they'll still have almost 11 million in cap space left over after doing that. I've said it before in this show. I'll say it again. 11 million in cap space plus John Collins. Go get Brandon Ingram. I think that's a pretty solid deal for both sides. I think Collins could really fit well with Zion Williamson. Is he an ideal center fit? No, he's not ideal, but pretty solid. I think he would do a pretty solid job there for them. And if they have somebody else who's ready, he's only got 1 year left, assuming he picks up that player option anyway. And you could pivot in a different direction at that point if Yves Missy proves ready, or Daniel Tice is more ready to go. That's the direction I would go. I'm sure they would maybe prefer Walker Kessler instead, and maybe other stuff to get there, but matching wise, that leftover cap space plus Collins works pretty good to get you Brandon Ingram. But yeah, on the Utah side, no issue. The one place they don't really have another really good player, because Markkanen, you can play him on the wing, but you can very easily also say, all right, he's our 4. And you could then slide Ingram in at your 3 spot and probably be a pretty decent team. You at least have the bones of a pretty good team there. And let's say you hit the trade deadline and you're playing pretty well. Let's say you're in like the 6, 7, 8 range. Then you want to push up. Well, you've got a bunch of draft picks. You've got a bunch of kids. Go out and trade for another veteran player and go. What Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have done is they've given the Jazz all kinds of optionality here. And if Ingram is just at the cost of, hey, we're going to use the rest of our cap space and maybe get off a contract that we don't necessarily love having on the books, go for it. Do that, because then that puts you in a spot where a year from now, you're pretty well set up and you can then wipe Ingram off the books if it doesn't work out, or retrade him later this season or something like that. So you're kind of, in a lot of ways, you're kicking those options cans down the road a little bit. You kick the Markkanen one way down the road, because now we're talking next summer before you can trade him, if that's the direction you wanted to go. But an Ingram trade, that only kicks it down the road, maybe a few months down the line. So yeah, I think that could be a thing we could see.
I'm from a Lakers perspective, selfishly, I don't want to see this happen, because I could see a scenario here, Keith, where both the Pelicans and the Jazz get better by trading with each other, with Ingram going to Utah. And if you can work Walker Kessler into a package to the Pelicans, that solves an issue for them. And then there's other pieces obviously will be coming back. Like if it's like somehow there's a Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler move that those two
which
land
also
and
get you there. Yep.
Which could also get you there. Like I think you could make the argument that the Pelicans can improve and the Jazz can improve, and you could have. I mean, the Jazz right now are seen as a fringe play-in-ish team in the Western Conference. I think they could actually take a step forward, and I think that the Pelicans could take a step forward as well and maybe solidify themselves as a playoff squad. So that in an already crowded West, I'm kind of hoping it doesn't happen, but it does make a lot of sense to me for both sides, Keith, for those two to explore something.
Sure. I mean, and that would leave you really with just Portland as the only team that you're going into the season saying, all right, they're probably not going to be very good. And there's a world where Scoot Henderson comes back better, Shaedon Sharpe comes back better, and just they find the right mix of guys. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a world where that happens too, because San Antonio would be the only other team that I think we'd be counting on as not being very good. And Wemby may lift them all by himself almost with Chris Paul and Brandon, Harrison Barnes. I wanted to say Brandon Ingram, and then people went, wait, what? Harrison Barnes, just two veteran guys there to help their young roster along a little bit, and all of a sudden, yeah, then the Spurs are into it, right? So that could be a whole thing where all of a sudden we're in a spot where, oh my gosh, we don't have any teams we can count out. Now, somebody will end up bad. Somebody we think that is good will have an awful year, kind of like Memphis had last year. It happens every year. That's going to be somebody. But yeah, for you being pretty reasonable about where the Lakers are, probably in that range of fighting, let's say 5 through 12 in the West, in that bucket of teams, maybe even a little under that, could be maybe 6 to 10 range or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to introduce another team or two into that mix either, right? Because now you're in a spot where it's like, all right, how do we, figure this out? Like, and then that becomes one of those, we talked about it all last season. You have a bad week or two, and now the next thing you know, you're 5 games back because you had one bad week of four game losing streak or something, and now your season's a mess.
And that's exactly what happened to the Lakers after the in-season tournament last year. They had a bad 3 weeks where they went 3-13 or something, and that was it.
Yep.
That was
never
it. That was
really recovered. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they battled their way back, but my God,
Sure.
I mean there was that. I mean Lakers fans know well, and I'm not going to turn this into a Lakers show or anything, but there was a period where they kept winning and winning and winning and winning, and they couldn't get out of ninth because everybody around them kept winning in the Western Conferences. So that's going to be the margin for error is going to be so small. But again, if Utah and the Pels, they see an opportunity here, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to.